I, 42 farads, have been grappling with complex family issues for as long as I can remember, and I think it's finally time to share my story. I have a younger sister, 38 farads, and our relationship has always been complicated, to say the least. Our parents have clearly favored her over me throughout our lives, and I've constantly felt like I'm playing second fiddle in my own family. It's a feeling that has shaped nearly every aspect of my life, from my career choices to my relationships, and even my sense of self-worth. From a young age, all of my parents' attention was focused on my sister. She was always the outgoing, popular one, while I was more introverted and, frankly, lonely. I can still vividly remember my 10th birthday party. My parents had invited the whole class, but only a handful of kids showed up. Meanwhile, my sister, who was only 6 at the time, had somehow become the center of attention, entertaining everyone with her antics. My parents were so focused on her that they barely noticed when I quietly slipped away to my room, fighting back tears. In school, my sister was the life of the party, and I was just there. I can't count the number of times I heard things like, "Why can't you be more outgoing like your sister?" Or, "Your sister is so lively, why aren't you?" These comparisons were constant, chipping away at my self-esteem bit by bit. I started to believe that there must be something wrong with me, that I wasn't good enough simply because I wasn't like my sister. As we grew older, the favoritism only became more apparent. When it came to my career, I tried desperately to carve out my own path, but my parents never seemed to recognize my efforts. It was always, "You should network more, like your sister," or "If you were as charming as your sister, you'd get promoted faster." Every accomplishment of mine was measured against my sister's, and I always came up short in their eyes. I threw myself into my work, thinking that if I could just be successful enough, my parents would finally see my worth. I climbed the corporate ladder, working late nights and weekends, sacrificing my personal life for my career. I remember one particularly grueling project where I worked 80-hour weeks for months on end. When it was finally over, and I had secured a major client for my company, I called my parents, excited to share the news. Their response: "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did we tell you about your sister's new job? She's going to be making 6 figures." It was always like that. No matter how high I rose, it was never enough for them. My sister, meanwhile, seemed to coast through life on her charm and our parents' unwavering support. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. She's not a bad person, and I know it's not her fault that our parents treat us differently. But it's hard not to feel resentful sometimes, especially when she seems oblivious to the preferential treatment she receives. Last month, my sister got married. To say our parents were over the moon would be an understatement. They poured their heart and soul, and a significant chunk of their savings, into planning the wedding. I offered to help with the preparations, thinking it might be a chance for us to bond as a family. But I was politely rebuffed at every turn. "Oh, you're so busy with work, we wouldn't want to bother you," they'd say. But the truth was, they didn't want me involved. I tried to stay positive, telling myself that it was my sister's big day, and it wasn't about me. But as the wedding day approached, I found myself feeling more and more like an outsider in my own family. The final straw came when I discovered that my parents had asked my sister's best friend to be her maid of honor without even considering me. When I confronted them about it, my mother just said, "Well, you're not really the maid of honor type, are you? We thought you'd be more comfortable with a smaller role." The wedding day itself was difficult. Our parents' speeches were filled with praise for my sister, anecdotes about her childhood, and how proud they were of the woman she'd become. There wasn't a single mention of me. It was as if I didn't exist, as if their family was complete with just the 3 of them. I sat there, forcing a smile, while inside I felt like I was crumbling. After the ceremony, I overheard my mother talking to one of her friends. "We're so relieved," she said. "We were worried we might never get to experience a wedding day like this." The implication was clear. They didn't think I'd ever get married. It felt like a punch to the gut. But the worst was yet to come. Later that evening, my mother pulled me aside. "I thought, for a moment that she might apologize for leaving me out of the speeches. Instead, she said something that I'll never forget. "Don't worry about your wedding. We went all out for this one because, well, it might be the only one we get to plan. We wanted to make sure we did it right." In that moment, something inside me broke. All the years of feeling second best, of trying to win their approval, came crashing down around me. But at the same time, it was like a fog had lifted. For the first time, I saw clearly how toxic our family dynamic had become. The thing is, I'm not some lonely spinster they need to worry about. I have a wonderful fiance, 39M, who sees my worth and loves me for who I am, not who he thinks I should be. We've been together for 2 years, and he's been my rock through all of this family drama. He's the one who encouraged me to seek therapy, to start working on my self-esteem issues. I met my fiance at a work conference 3 years ago. At first, I was hesitant to let him in. Years of feeling not good enough had left me wary of relationships, but he was patient and kind, slowly breaking down the walls I'd built around myself. I remember the moment I realized I was falling in love with him. We were having a quiet night in, and I was telling him about a difficult day at work. Instead of offering solutions or trying to fix things, he just listened. Then he said, "You're amazing, you know that? The way you handle challenges, the way you care about your work. You're incredible." It was the first time in my life that I felt truly seen and appreciated for who I am. My fiance has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this family drama. He's held me as I've cried after difficult phone calls with my parents. He's encouraged me to set boundaries and to prioritize my own mental health. And he's never once compared me to my sister or made me feel like I'm not enough. I also have an amazing best friend, 41 feuds, who's been by my side since college. She's always been there to remind me of my strengths when I'm drowning in self-doubt. She was the one who held me as I cried after the wedding, telling me over and over that I deserve better. Our friendship has been a constant source of support and validation in my life. She's seen me at my lowest points and has never judged me for my struggles with my family. Instead, she's always been there with a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and sometimes a much-needed reality check when I start to internalize my parents' criticisms. My best friend has also been instrumental in helping me build a life outside of my family's influence. She's the one who encouraged me to pursue hobbies and interests that I enjoy, regardless of whether they meet my parents' approval. Thanks to her, I've discovered a passion for painting, something I never would have tried if I was still solely focused on impressing my parents. These painting sessions have become a form of therapy for me, a way to express emotions that I've kept bottled up for years. Now, I'm trying to reclaim my life and my sense of self-worth. I'm in therapy, working through years of emotional neglect and trying to build a stronger sense of self. It's not easy. There are days when I still hear my parents' critical voices in my head, telling me I'm not good enough. But I'm learning to challenge those thoughts, to remind myself of my own worth and capabilities. My fiance and I are talking about our own wedding plans, something small and intimate that truly reflects us as a couple. It's exciting, but it also brings up a lot of complicated emotions. Part of me wants to have the big wedding my sister had, to prove to my parents that I'm worthy of celebration too. But I'm trying to remind myself that this day should be about my fiance and me, not about proving anything to my family. In therapy, I'm also working on understanding why my parents treat my sister and me so differently. My therapist has suggested that it might have to do with their own insecurities and unfulfilled dreams. My sister, with her outgoing personality and social success, might represent everything they wished they could be. Meanwhile, my more introverted nature and focus on career success might remind them of their own perceived failures. It doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps me see them as flawed humans rather than these all-powerful figures whose approval I need to earn. But I'm struggling with how to move forward with my family. Part of me wants to cut them off entirely, to protect myself from further hurt. Another part of me hopes that maybe, just maybe, we can repair our relationship, but I don't even know where to start. I've thought about confronting them, laying out all the ways they've hurt me over the years. But I'm afraid they'll just dismiss my feelings, like they always have. Or worse, they'll turn it around and make me feel like I'm the problem for being too sensitive or jealous of my sister. My fiance thinks I should give them one last chance to sit down and have an honest conversation about our relationship. He believes that if I can clearly express how their actions have affected me, there's a chance they might understand and want to change. He's offered to be there with me for support if I decide to have this conversation. My best friend, on the other hand, thinks I should prioritize my own healing and keep my distance from them, at least for now. She's worried that trying to repair the relationship before I've fully worked through my own issues might set me back in my progress. She's suggested that I might want to write them a letter instead, expressing my feelings without the pressure of an immediate response. I'm torn. On one hand, they're my family. Despite everything, there's a part of me that still craves their love and approval. I have happy memories mixed in with the painful ones. My dad teaching me to ride a bike, my mom comforting me after my first heartbreak. I wonder if those moments of connection are worth fighting for. On the other hand, I'm exhausted from years of trying to be good enough for them, only to be constantly overlooked and undervalued. I worry that continuing to engage with them might prevent me from fully healing and moving forward with my life. And I'm scared of bringing my future children into this dynamic, of them feeling the same pain and insecurity that I've felt. As I write this, I realize that this is the first time I've ever really articulated all of these feelings. It's overwhelming, but also somewhat liberating. I've spent so much of my life trying to be what I thought my parents wanted me to be. Now, I'm finally starting to figure out who I am and what I want. So, Reddit, I'm turning to you for advice. What would you do in my situation? How do I navigate this complex family dynamic? Is there any hope for repairing our relationship, or should I focus on building a new family with my fiance and friends who truly value me? For those of you who have been in similar situations, how did you handle it? Did you manage to repair your relationship with your family, or did you find it better to distance yourself? And if you did distance yourself, how did you cope with the guilt and the societal pressure to maintain family relationships? I know this was long, and if you've read this far, thank you. It feels good to finally share this with someone, even if it's just strangers on the internet. Any advice or words of support would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I'm not sure which path to take. But I know I can't continue living in this limbo, constantly seeking approval that never comes. It's time for a change. I'm just not sure what that change should look like. Update 1. It's been 2 months since my original post, and I wanted to update you all on what's been happening. First, thank you to everyone who read my story and offered advice. Your support has been invaluable. The biggest change has been in my self-perception. I've been consistently attending therapy, and I'm seeing real progress with my self-esteem. My therapist is helping me work through years of emotional neglect and constant comparison to my sister. It's not easy, but I'm learning to recognize my own worth, independent of my family's approval. A helpful exercise has been keeping a wins journal. Every day, I write down one thing I'm proud of, no matter how small. This is slowly helping me internalize that I'm capable and worthy, regardless of what my family thinks. I've also opened up to colleagues about my struggles. Surprisingly, many shared similar experiences, which has helped me feel less alone and led to some great mentorship opportunities. The most significant change has been in my relationship with my fiance. As we plan our wedding, our bond has grown stronger. He's been my rock through all of this, always there to listen and support without judgment. We've had deep conversations about our future, including how we want to approach family dynamics with our own potential children. It's been scary but liberating to voice my fears about repeating the patterns I grew up with. My fiance has been understanding and promised to always be my partner in creating a loving, supportive home. A memorable moment happened last week. While discussing wedding plans, I admitted part of me wanted a big wedding like my sister's, just to prove to my family that I'm worthy of celebration. My fiance said, "You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You're worthy of celebration every day, and I want our wedding to be about us, not your parents or anyone else." His words were a wake-up call that I was still subconsciously seeking my parents' approval. We've now decided to plan a wedding that truly reflects us as a couple. We've made some concrete decisions. We're planning a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and family, possibly in an outdoor setting like a garden or beach at sunset. We want to create a warm, joyful atmosphere to celebrate our love and commitment. For our honeymoon, we're considering a hiking trip through a national park, combining our love for nature with the romance of starting our married life. However, I'm facing a dilemma about whether to invite my parents and sister to the wedding. Part of me hopes for reconciliation, but I'm worried about them overshadowing our day or making hurtful comments. My fiance has been supportive, assuring me he'll stand by whatever I decide. He's even offered to talk to my family if we invite them, to set clear boundaries about behavior expectations. My best friend has also been a great support. She's my maid of honor and has thrown herself into helping with wedding planning. Her enthusiasm for this new chapter in my life has been a beautiful counterpoint to my complicated family emotions. She's been gently pushing me to consider what I truly want, separate from any family obligation. "This is your day," she reminds me. "You deserve to be surrounded by people who genuinely celebrate you." I'm in a much better place than I was 2 months ago. I'm starting to believe in myself more and recognize my own strength. I'm building a future with a partner who truly values me, and learning that family isn't just about blood relations, but about those who support you unconditionally. But I'm still struggling with how to handle my biological family. Should I invite them to the wedding and risk drama? Should I have another conversation with them before deciding? Or should I focus on this new chapter of my life? I'd love to hear your thoughts, Reddit. How have you handled similar situations with family and weddings? Any advice on setting boundaries or having difficult conversations would be appreciated. Thank you again for your support. It means so much to have this space to share and process. I'll keep you updated as things progress. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened. Thank you all for your advice and support on my last post. After much deliberation with my fiance and therapist, we decided to send invitations to my parents and sister. We spent time crafting the perfect invitation, trying to strike a balance between warmth and maintaining healthy boundaries. The response was not what I had hoped for. 3 days after sending the invitations, I received a call from my mother. At first, she seemed excited, but then came the questions. "Why is the wedding so small? Don't you want a proper celebration like your sister had?" When I explained that we wanted an intimate ceremony that reflected our personalities, she scoffed. "You've always been so difficult. Can't you just do something normal for once?" I tried to stay calm, using the techniques I've been learning in therapy. I explained that this was our day, and we wanted to celebrate it in our way. That's when my father got on the phone. "Your mother and I have been talking," he said sternly. "We think you're making a mistake with this small wedding. It's embarrassing for the family. What will people think?" I was stunned. They were still more concerned about appearances than my happiness. I managed to keep my composure and told them that while I appreciated their input, the decision was final. The call ended with my mother in tears and my father angry. I was shaken after the call, but my fiance was there to support me. He held me as I cried, reminding me that their reaction was about them, not about us. The next day, I received a surprisingly supportive text from my sister. Confused, I called her. Our conversation was awkward at first, but as we talked, she opened up. "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship," she said. "I never realized how much you were struggling. I always envied you, you know." I was shocked. "Envied me? But you were always the favorite," she laughed sadly. "Maybe to our parents, but I always felt like I was living in your shadow. You were so smart and driven. I felt like I had to be the life of the party just to get any attention at all. We talked for hours, really talked, for the first time in years. She apologized for the times she'd been insensitive, and I apologized for the resentment I'd harbored. It wasn't a magical fix, but it felt like a start. However, our newfound understanding has created a new dilemma. My sister wants to help with the wedding, to be a part of it in a meaningful way. Part of me is thrilled at the idea of rebuilding our relationship, but another part is wary. What if this is just setting me up for more disappointment? My fiancé thinks it's a positive step, but he's leaving the decision up to me. My best friend is more cautious, reminding me of all the hurt I've experienced in the past. It's okay to be hopeful, she said, but don't forget to protect yourself too. I'm torn. This could be the beginning of a new, healthier relationship with my sister, but I'm scared of opening myself up to more pain. And then there's the issue of our parents. How will they react if my sister is involved, but they're kept at arm's length? As for the wedding itself, we're moving forward with our plans. We've found a beautiful garden venue that perfectly captures the intimate, romantic atmosphere we're going for. We've chosen a color scheme, picked out flowers, and started looking at catering options. Despite the family drama, I find myself getting excited about these details. It's a reminder that this day is about celebrating our love, regardless of who attends. My fiancé has been my rock through all of this. He's been patient when I've needed to vent, offered advice when I've asked for it, and given me space when I've needed to process things on my own. His unwavering support has made me even more certain that I'm making the right decision in marrying him. In therapy, I'm working on setting and maintaining boundaries. My therapist has been helping me practice responses to potential scenarios at the wedding, giving me tools to handle any difficult situations that might arise. It's empowering to feel prepared, but also a little sad that I have to prepare for conflict on what should be one of the happiest days of my life. So, Reddit, I find myself at another crossroads. Do I accept my sister's offer to help with the wedding, potentially opening the door to reconciliation, but also risking more hurt? How do I balance my desire for family harmony with the need to protect myself? And how do I handle my parents' disapproval without letting it overshadow our special day? Any advice or personal experiences would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all again for your support. It means more than you know. Update 3. It's been a week since our wedding, and I wanted to share this final update with all of you who have supported me through this journey. So much has happened, and I'm still processing it all. After careful consideration, I decided to accept my sister's offer to help with the wedding. It was a risk, but one that I felt was worth taking. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. My sister and I worked together on last-minute details, and I was surprised by how well we collaborated. There were moments of tension, but we managed to communicate openly and work through them. The wedding day itself was intense. As I began my walk down the aisle, I saw my parents sitting in the front row. My mother was dabbing at her eyes, and my father actually smiled at me. It wasn't the warm, proud smile I had always hoped for, but it was something. The ceremony was everything we had hoped for: intimate, personal, and filled with love. When my fiancé and I exchanged our vows, I felt like the rest of the world faded away. In that moment, it was just us, making promises to each other. During the reception, my sister approached me with a small, wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet that had been our grandmother's. This bracelet had been a point of contention between us for years, and her giving it to me felt like a peace offering. Later, to my surprise, my father asked me to dance. As we swayed awkwardly to the music, he said, "Your mother and I, we may not have always understood you, but seeing you today, you seem happy, really happy." It wasn't an apology, but it felt like an acknowledgement. The rest of the night passed in a blur of dancing, laughter, and celebration. There were moments of tension, but overall, it was a joyous occasion. My new husband was by my side throughout, supporting me during difficult moments and beaming with happiness during the good ones. As we were leaving for our honeymoon, my sister pulled me aside one last time. I know things haven't been easy between us, she said. But I want you to know, I'm proud of you, and I hope we can keep working on our relationship. The days since the wedding have been a mix of honeymoon bliss and quiet reflection. My husband and I spent a wonderful week hiking in a national park, disconnected from the world and focused on each other. Now that we're back home, I'm trying to process everything that happened. I've had a session with my therapist since returning, and we've been working through my feelings about the wedding and what it means for my family relationships going forward. She's encouraged me to see the positive steps that were taken, while also reminding me that it's okay to still have mixed feelings. My husband and I have talked a lot about boundaries and what kind of relationship we want to have with my family moving forward. We're agreed that we want to keep the lines of communication open, but also that we need to prioritize our own little family unit. I've exchanged a few text messages with my sister since the wedding. They've been tentative but friendly. We're planning to meet for coffee next week to talk more. With my parents, things are still a bit strained, but there's a sense that something has shifted. My mother called to ask how the honeymoon was, and while the conversation was somewhat stilted, it didn't have the undercurrent of criticism I've come to expect. As I reflect on this whole journey, from my original post to now, I'm amazed at how much has changed. I'm not naive enough to think that all our family issues are resolved. I know there's still a lot of work to be done. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. I've learned so much about myself through this process. I've learned to stand up for what I want, to set boundaries, and to value myself, even when others don't. I've learned that it's okay to hope for better relationships with my family, but that my worth isn't dependent on their approval. Most importantly, I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who support you, who celebrate your joys and stand by you in your struggles. My husband, my best friend, and even some of you here on Reddit, you've all been family to me through this. To anyone out there struggling with similar family issues, I want you to know that it does get better. It might not be perfect. It might not be what you imagined, but there is hope. Keep working on yourself. Surround yourself with people who truly care about you, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Your advice, your encouragement, and your shared experiences have meant the world to me. I couldn't have gotten through this without you. Here's to new beginnings, to healing, and to creating the kind of love and support we all deserve.